says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell-Gillard!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to preview a couple of games of the Parramatta Eels, a couple of important games, especially for our NRL team, is my good mate Sixties. But we also got some State of Origin to talk, big fella. How you pulling up after a couple of under-19s games last night?
Yes, mate. We had the under-19s Origins matches, the male and the female matches last night, which was fantastic because we had no NRL matches scheduled for Thursday night football with Wednesday night's Origin game being played this week. But before we dive in, John, into the football itself, there is an important notice for members of Parramatta Leagues Club. It's a very important constitutional change that is being proposed, which is basically that to be a director of Parramatta Leagues Club, you cannot have been found to be not a fit and proper person of a governing body of a registered club. But basically it means that if any of the government authorities have found you not a fit and proper person, you cannot be a director of Parramatta Leagues Club. Now, I think that's pretty straightforward. It was a part of the constitutional change that was unable to be voted through when the constitutional change was first made. But now there's been some things which have meant that, some challenges to the Constitution, which basically means that it's really important that this is now part of the Constitution. And as I said, it's pretty straightforward. Do you want people as directors of the Leagues Club who have been found to be not a fit and proper person to be a secretary or to be a director of Parramatta Leagues Club? It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a straightforward vote, but people should vote, of course, however they want to. You have the opportunity to vote. You should have received notification via email or via mail of the actual full details of that change. You can then vote electronically. It's really, really straightforward. It takes all of about 2 minutes just to go in and lodge your vote electronically. There is a general meeting that is going to be held on the 27th of this month, the 27th of July, which is not next Thursday, but the Thursday after at Parramatta Leagues Club. So you can actually be there and see how that vote has panned out. You have to vote before that date. So you need to vote by, I think, 5 p.m. of the 26th of July. So check your emails if you haven't got it. Check your mail, and if you're a Leagues Club member and you haven't received any notification, then get in touch with the club and let them know that you want to vote. As I said, whichever way you vote, that's entirely up to you. I have expressed my thoughts on that because I think it's fairly straightforward. But the main thing is just vote, and that way the voting becomes representative of the wishes of Leagues Club members and not by just a few select people.
Yeah, well said, mate. And the other thing, as always, that we do like to shout out are the sponsors of the show: Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, helping us get this episode or each and every episode out for you guys each week. But 60s, let's jump into the football, starting with the under-19s women's game where the Blues were run down. They burst out of the blocks, got to the lead. I think it was 10-4, but then ended up losing this one 20-14. The Queenslanders absorbed a lot of pressure on their goal line, and then in the second half bagged 3 tries to win this game. And it set up what looked to be a potential sweep across all formats in State of Origin this year: NRLW, NRL, obviously under-19s women's, and then the men were the last bastion left for the Blues. But this game wasn't broadcast on TV. It was on the live stream, I believe, wasn't it? Or was it
No,
nine now?
it was actually on Gem, I think it was.
Yeah, sorry, it was I was saying 9. 9 now on Gem. Yeah, so they had it on the auxiliary channels there. But this one was played at KO Stadium alongside the under-19s boys as well. And yeah, I mean, good game here.
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, Parramatta had Lindsay Tui playing at right centre for the Blues team. Now, the thing about Lindsay, look, I think anyone that watched the game probably would have liked the ball to have been in Lindsay's hands a little bit more, because what she did demonstrate in the game last night was the power in her game, like the carries, the tackles. Really impressed with those few opportunities that she got, but it was one of those games where when the ball was shifted out to the right, that it tended to go with the fullback or the back rower rather than Lindsay. But when she got her carries from kick returns, those sorts of things, we saw the power in her game. And as I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, but it was one of those games where it didn't come her way. But look, she's had a great year, and I think, as I said, the little bit that we saw of her in last night's game emphasised just what a strong, powerful player that she is. And we're going to see a lot more of her going through into NRLW, as she is one of those players on a development contract with the Parramatta Eels.
And the other player we actually missed because we didn't see it coming through our pathways, but a recruit that we picked up this year for the NRLW actually in this team was Chloe Jackson, who played on the edges and captained the team.
So Chloe, and well noted there, Chloe was actually the player that was inside Lindsay in this particular game. And as I said, a lot of the ball running on those plays that would either find its way into the hands of Chloe or with the fullback. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the fullback's
Sienna Williams.
Yeah, so she actually does a bit of work with our mate Spiro on 2GB with the Ben Ford and Breakfast show on morning radio. But so the plays were a lot of the plays saw either herself or Chloe getting the ball on the charge in those plays close to the line. And as I said, it wasn't the fault of those players that the ball wasn't getting into the hands of Lindsay. It was just this was the plays that were run. Now, Chloe is a very, very strong runner of the football, very elusive as well for a back rower. Got like really good quick stepping, which I think makes it hard for her to be brought down. It'll be interesting to see how she progresses into the NRLW squad and where that takes her game. But certainly the Eels have done really, really well in recruiting her for the NRLW squad.
And one thing I did want to mention about Lindsay Sixties, which is a massive credit to her talents, is that she's a year under eligibility here for the New South Wales 19. She actually turns 18 this year. So she's got a chance to come back next year and get the win for the Blues.
Well, I think, as I said, what we saw last night was the fact that she's got a power game stands her in good stead to be able to transition into senior women's football fairly quickly. So looking forward to seeing how she goes. And as you mentioned as well, the new recruit in Chloe Jackson.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't get the bickies there, but we move on to the New South Wales under-19s men's game where the Blues prevented that full-on, not just the series sweep that we're looking for in the NRL version of State of Origin, but the full-on slate of sweeps with Queensland winning everything else. But yeah, the Blues prevailed here 32-14. A very good night if your name was Ethan, by the way. Ethan Strange, Ethan Ferguson, and Ethan Sanders all starring, probably picking up the 3-2-1, I'd say, in this game. It was a freaky Thursday sort of set of instances here. But yeah, in that set of try scorers, Strange bagged the double. He looks sensational out in that right edge centre. Really one of the, I mean, he had a high-profile partner in Chevy Stewart at fullback. He's the one that's been making all the waves as a NRL superstar prospect, but Strange was the Canberra prospect that really stood out here. Ethan Ferguson, who started this year at Newcastle, made the jump to the Rabbitohs after the SG Ball season finished. He had a very good game on the wing as well. And Ethan Sanders, they all bagged tries. Strange, a hat-trick. Ferguson and Sanders one apiece, and Savelio Tamale, who came in and had a nice impact on that left edge, also bagged one as well. Ferguson goal kicking 4 from 6. There was a sin bin, Mitchell Jennings, for a high shot on the 5'8" Fainu. And in this one, I thought this was a really good game from the Blues. There wasn't too much hero ball. They had good systems in place. Ethan Sanders, we'll talk about him shortly, but he had a very good game. But yeah, like I said, good night to be in Ethan. And yeah, a good game for the Blues.
Yeah, just before I comment on the men's game there, the under-19s game there, one thing I wanted to mention from the women's game was how impressive Lasana Lutu was in the playing at lock.
Yeah, former para prospect, but a West Tigers junior who is linked back up with her junior club now for the NRLW. Lutu, I think she's a half, but capable of playing in the back row. A real throwback, isn't it, in terms of rugby league?
Look, I think she's, with the way that the lock role is these days, I think she's going to be someone who you will see at lock. Skill set is just off the charts, just way off the charts. She was probably unlucky to be on the losing team, to be honest, because she would have figured right up there in the best on-field discussions, certainly with New South Wales doing as well as they did for a large chunk of the match before Queensland sort of arrested that momentum. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that as well, because she was a real standout, and people might see a bit of her for West Tigers this year in the NRLW. But yeah, just onto the under-19 men's game. Mate, you might be able to fill me in on this. I don't know the details of when that change happened, but how Ferguson got away from the Knights.
I don't know, yeah.
To South Sydney. I'm just wondering whether, he signed during the SG Ball season or after the SG Ball season, but he certainly looks to be one out of the box, doesn't he, in terms of how he plays, whether he stays as a winger, whether he goes into other positions as remains to be seen. He's certainly not short on confidence.
No, I think that was a theme for a number of these boys, wasn't it? And it's no guarantee to lock you in as an NRL star, but the under-19s origin has been a very good predictor of quality NRL talent in recent years. And yeah, the trio of Ethan certainly didn't put a foot wrong here, alongside a couple other players who had good games, and one of them was a Parramatta boy. I thought Charlie Guymer was outstanding on that left edge 60s. Could have got a double. He was barely held up in the first half on 2 occasions, and I thought he ran the ball with plenty of intent, tackled strong, and yeah, really looked a class in a very good New South Wales outfit. And I think he might have given our coaches some food for thought about where his ceiling could be just this year, let alone long term.
Yeah, he was really in great touch last night. He's just everything that he does, you know that he's giving it like every ounce of his being, whether it be in whatever side of the game, attack or defence that you're talking about. We've seen him play the majority of the SG Ball season as a 13. And then the grand final, he switched back to the edge, didn't he, in the grand final?
Yes.
And Saxon Pryke played at 13 in the SG Ball grand final. And I mean, when you're talking about someone who at the Mats level was playing as a centre
and a 5'8" before that,
he's. To make that transition to the forwards, you're talking about a far greater workload, especially when you're playing at 13. And I guess in him playing at 13, and he did such a great job playing at 13 and and captaining the team out there. But it was a reminder when he was back on the edge in that grand final, just what a devastating runner of the football he is as well.
Yep.
And he just, it was like, it was almost like he fully embraced that opportunity to go back to an edge. And we saw that again last night. And just the pressure that he was putting on with his line speed in defence. Like there was a couple of times where he went charging out and he didn't quite get the full contact on the opposition player that he wanted. But
he deflected the ball runner back into the defence. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, like he was really deflecting them as a ball runner, and it gave the opportunity for those following him up in defence to finish them off. And just that energy that he brought to that left edge was really, really impressive. I thought he was one of the standout performers. You mentioned Ethan Sanders, really composed game from him, wasn't it?
I mean,
it was almost. There was elements of that were very Moses-like. I mean, I'm talking about 2023 Mitchell Moses too.
Just pure game
like
management.
The mature, just the game management.
Ball on a string.
Game.
Yep.
I mean, but when the running game's called on, I mean, we saw last night he had a bit to do with that try, and he basically pulled the right strings with what he took as the option for his run to the line. So
he bagged one and could have easily had another three. He was denied by the skin of his teeth on several occasions by some desperate Queensland defence.
Yeah. Yes.
Could he have had a gaudier, flashier game? Which is, almost unfair to say, maybe. But in terms of the fundamentals, that was as good a game as he could have put together, showing the world how NRL ready he will be in the near future. I mean, he's got the strong defence because Queensland threw a lot at him. He's got the running game. He's got a clean passing game. And most importantly, he's got one of the best long kicking games. And even the attacking bombs were fantastic. They were dropping on dimes just short of the goal line that you're going to see from an NRL prospect. And look, we've talked about it at length. We want the Eels to keep this kid, but it's going to be a tough proposition. There's going to be a number of clubs that are going to see that tape from last night and say, well, we can work with this. And it's a credit to Ethan Sanders for the hard work he's done for his game to put himself in that position. But yeah, hopefully the Eels can retain him, because I think there's also, he's got the build and skill set where obviously long term he could be a halves prospect for the Eels, but I think there could be something else there in the midterm. I mean,
what are you thinking?
I mean, when you're mid 180s and built solid like that, there could be options from like a 14 sort of position where you just get him into first grade some way somehow, and he can be, whether it's your utility. Obviously, you throw in dummy half, and that's going to take some work to get anyone into that position that isn't a natural dummy half. But there, back row, centres, he has got the skill set, I think, to with some work, make that transition to a sort of Swiss Army knife in the short term, midterm.
Yeah, so are you talking about that might be the way that he debuts, is someone with with multiple skills to come off the bench as his introduction to first grade?
For the Eels, for sure. Yeah, I think that's probably our best way to sell it to him. Obviously, other clubs can say, well, we see you as a halfback and a halfback only. But I think you look at just the way he's built, 60s. He is not a small lad. He stands stands tall. He stands well, good strength in that frame as well. So I think there is something to explore there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting at how the Eels sell a future at the club to him in comparison to how other clubs sell what they see in their vision for him. Knowing the way that Fieldsy advises his players, he advises them in whatever their best interest might be, like in terms of their long term. Not he's a sort of bloke that wants to look after their long term interests, not short term gains. So whether their the best future for Ethan is a shift of clubs, whether the best future for Ethan is to get a year or two in the lower grades at Parramatta before deciding on where his future may lie. And the thing is, you just don't know what's going to happen in that immediate future. I mean, you could look at Moses and Brown as the long-term half incumbents at the Eels and say, that's blocking anyone's path to first grade. But you never know what's around the corner.
Well, two months ago, Moses and Brown looked untouchable on and off the field. Dylan's obviously since then made a significant error off the field, and while we all hope he's going to learn from it and be a better person for it, he could also just be one mistake away from being cut from the Eels now. So
that's right, absolutely. I mean, you just don't know what the future has in store. I mean, like even with Parramatta making that decision to release Jake Arthur, and within a week, the scenario unfolded where Jake basically would have been playing first grade every week since almost since he departed the Eels
through Origin, exactly.
Yep, through Origin and through the errors of
the suspension.
These are the things that you just don't know. So, look, it'll be interesting. I would imagine that in the not too distant future, we are going to learn about what decision Ethan makes in terms of his future. He's still contracted to Parramatta for next year, but I think there's been a bit of talk to try to sort out his future prior to when he would theoretically go on the open market, which is obviously November 1. So I think feels he's pretty keen, I think, to get that sorted. Ethan's probably pretty keen to get that sorted so they know where they stand further than just for next year. So, I guess watch this space there. It'll probably be known in the near future. Sam Tuivasa didn't get too much game time.
New South Wales dominated this game in two segments, the start and then the end. I say start and end, but obviously it branches deeper and backwards significantly. But the one period where Queensland got real traction in this game and had the real run of possession came in when they started it and Sam got tagged into the rotation in the middle, and I think he got opportunity to run the ball once or twice just because Queensland had all the ball. He made a lot of tackles, which you want to see from the big fella, but he just had no opportunities to showcase his wares with the ball in hand. It's just one of those things. It just happens. Yeah. And poor fella. I mean, I will say this: there were some giants out there. The Queensland number 10, Benjamin Takura, he's 207 centimetres, I think, or something like that, 205. Absolute mountain of a man.
He's like 6'7" or
6'7" or something like that. I will say this.
That's insane. That's insane.
He's a big boy, and I'm sure he towers over Sam, but watching Sam out there, he looked like a Hulk among those boys. There were giant units. Jack Clydesdale, we saw him in the SG Ball 60s. He's huge. Samuel Afinu, another big lad, but Sam looked huge out there, so that was encouraging. He's going to have a lot better opportunities to attack with the Eels. Just poor man, coincidences lined up against him in this game, and I hope no one marks that. I mean, no one should be marking him against that against him for being a victim of circumstance.
Well, mate, you mentioned before about Lindsay Tui's age. And we should mention as well that Sam is 18 years of age this year. So he's got another year where he can run around in SG Ball next year. Another year of New South Wales under-19s origin, theoretically.
Yeah, so for some way, I don't think he's going to be running around in SG Ball. I get this feeling that he might be pushed through into Flegg more full time. So, very, very talented prospect, Sam. One that we've had our eyes on for a long time. He's been impressive at each and every level as a junior eligible player starting from his junior eligible year. Harold Matt, he has just been dominant. So, better things on the horizon for him compared to the under-19s debut here. And Yeah, I mean, the Eels boys in general got to be happy with their performances. I thought Charlie and Ethan were sensational. And yeah, like we said with Sam, certainly not holding against him. We know that his talents and his efforts are ultra consistent for the Parramatta Eels. And yeah, just a victim of circumstance in this one.
Oh, mate, look, much the same as I said with Lindsay. It was we saw glimpses of her because the ball just didn't come her way as often as we'd like as a supporter. And but again, a good representation of the Eels in the under-19s age bracket. Just before we wrap up that under-19s, mate, probably one of the most hyped players in that team is Chevy Stewart. And he's obviously doing great things down in the Raiders. He's now the fullback in their reserve grade team, and maybe not too far away from pushing for first grade in the not too distant future. But the last two times I've seen him play was in the SG Ball grand final, and then in this Origin game, I don't think he had his best performances in either.
Oh, the SG Ball qualifying final, but yeah, he came back from New South Wales Cup as a late inclusion, and yeah, I do understand what you're saying. He's had when the Eels are involved, where it's that final or here in the Origin with the trio of Eels with him, he hasn't had the greatest games here, and yeah, it's how I suppose it's how showcase games work out sometimes, isn't it? Where you got one effort to really, showcase your wares, and if you have a bad game, that's what happens. And yeah, for Chevy, he hasn't been impressive the last two times we've seen him as that focal player in these lineups. And yeah, it's funny, but he did have a shocker out here. He had a bad mistake in the end goals that led to one of Queensland's tries. Struggled to inject himself from fullback, and like we said at the lead-in, Ethan Strange, his compatriot at Canberra, really outplayed him comprehensively in this one.
Well, I think it's one of those occasions where maybe he feels that he's got something to prove because of the fact that he's fast tracking through the Canberra system. And this isn't in any way talking about that maybe he isn't all that he's cracked up to be or anything like that, because he wouldn't have been progressed at such a young age into the fullback in Canberra's reserve grade team if he didn't have the talent. He wouldn't have been grabbed out of the Sharks system by the Raiders, like targeted. He was one of the standout players in SG Ball last year at a young age. So I think it's probably a matter of, a player like him, he's coming, in one sense, he's coming back in, like when he played in the SG Ball qualifying final, he was coming back to that grade. Like he was jumping back to age football. And I think he probably felt that he had to do more, or he had to be, he had a point that he had to prove that he didn't have to prove, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
he's almost guilty of trying too hard.
That's probably a good way of putting it.
I was just going to say, I think he was almost guilty of the same in that Origin game last night. I think he was overplaying his hand. And sometimes when you overplay your hand, that's when the errors come. And then when the errors come and you're thinking, oh, I've stuffed up there. I need to make up for that. You don't. Like, players don't need to make up for it. They just need to go back to doing what they do. I always use it as an example. James Maloney, like he was one who could, like he had the memory of a goldfish, didn't he?
Yeah.
Came to his own errors. Like he could put a mistake behind him so quickly.
He led the NRL in errors for several years in a row, where he'd just get it wrong on a play and never let it get to him. He'd pick himself back up and say, all right, back to work, next set, I'm going to go back to the well and I'm going to make the play this time. And it worked out tremendously for him. He carved out a really good NRL career, didn't he? Winning a premiership and being a representative caliber half.
Never got dirty on himself about things, like just as you said, just put it behind, go back to the world, go back to his game. Never let the chance of that error stop him from playing his natural game. And I think that's a lesson for all young players is, don't get harsh on yourself. Don't get dirty on yourself when you make an error. You don't even need for other players to come in and say, don't worry about it, give you a high five or a tap on the head or the backside or whatever the case may be after an error's made. Just get on with the next play.
Mm-hmm.
And they're when players are able to do that, that's when you see the best of them, because they're not playing inside their own heads, as it were, with whatever's just transpired. It's just it's the next play that's the important play, not the play that's just happened. So, Anyway, I just wanted to comment on that because I was getting a few messages last night about Chevy Stewart, and I thought it's worth having a quick chat on that. But now, mate, let's quickly get a few final thoughts on Origin 3 and the performances of our Eels in Origin 3, be it Mitch Moses, RCG, and the King, Gutho.
Yes, who ended the series, by the way. He had a chance to get a run and a tackle and managed to get the ball in his hand in the very last play. So well done to Gutho there in his 3 minutes on the field. But, yeah, the Blues...
Does that ensure that he ends up in the highlights, like where you see the full-time whistle blown and it's in the hands?
And it's in his hands, yep.
So there's no mistaking that he's been involved in an Origin win.
The morale captain for the Blues, yeah. With the series sweep on the line here in a home game, the Blues had to stand up, and they did. They won 24-10 in this one with a contest where they were the better team, but the scoreline doesn't really reflect some of the opportunities that Queensland also had. That they butchered a couple of tries going down by Queensland there, but for the Queenslanders, Dave Fafita and Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, who had an outstanding series, would have been right in calculations for the Wally Lewis medal, I reckon, after Cotter and the other one would have been the prop, Lindsay Collins, who all had a fantastic series. But for the Blues, Brian To'o, Josh Adokar, who scored a cracking individual try, and a Bradman Best double. The try scorers for New South Wales, pretty ordinary night for the goal kickers. Crichton 2 from 4 for the conversions. Holmes 1 from 2. Stephen did tack on 2 straightforward penalty goal attempts though to get the Blues home. New look Blues, rejigged halves combination, Moses and Walker. I tell you what, they work together really nicely. Cameron Murray being an important change there too at lock forward as both the go forward guy and the pivot for ball distribution. The trio of them work together really nicely from left to right and more importantly from right to left. And the Blues looked a much better outfit in this contest. And some of that would be, I don't want to overpraise the Blues because I think Queensland were also a definite notch down in intensity in this game, 60s. As much as they wanted to secure the series sweep, it is so hard in Origin to maintain the rage after you've gotten the series win and would have celebrated that after game 2.
Yeah, there was no doubt that their intensity was down, but all you can do is win an Origin game as it presents itself.
Yeah, you can only play what's in front of you. Exactly. I'm not going to criticise the Blues for that. And they looked vastly improved compared to their game 1 and 2 efforts in attack.
Look, my thoughts right from the start where I disagreed with Freddie's selections from game 1. But I also said, look, once you make the selections, you've got to ride with whatever you've decided to go with, because if you believe these players are the answer, it's like getting rid of them after a game is like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So I don't know how much of a signal to the future this is, because if Freddie's the coach next year, I've got no idea who he picks in game 1, and I don't know whether it will have any bearing to the form in the premiership up to that point in time. I don't know whether it's going to relate to game 3 this year. There's every likelihood that we will see things like fullbacks selected back in centre, because If you've got Latrell Mitchell in form, he's going to look to have him in the team somewhere. He's not going to. Tedesco said he's not going anywhere. He played a very good game 3, but he's said he's not going anywhere. So it's going to be unlikely that he'll be left out of Origin as the captain next year. So I think when next year rolls around, we'll probably be having the same selection discussions, debates, disagreements as we had this year. What I thought we ended up seeing was a whole lot of players playing their best position. Yeah, that's what it came down to.
Yeah.
You had people in the centres who were centres. You had a bloke at lock who is an outstanding player in the premiership at lock.
Well, and that's what had me scratch my head, because they interviewed Brandy on 360 the night after, and they were talking about how they weren't sure how he was going to go at lock at Origin level because he's been playing at the edge for New South Wales. Like, he's one of the best locks in the game at NRL level. Like, why would you have any doubts? I mean, I know that the New South Wales Hurricane are going to be patting themselves on the back for some of their picks and selections here, Bradman Best having a double and whatnot. And I'm going to talk about this with Quint on Tuesday again, but I feel like this is going back to when Reg got dumped for Saifiti the last time. This is a good result from a bad process. Bradman, he bagged the double, but the fact that you're not considering guys like Will Penasini, again, is the wrong process. So they'll tell themselves they got it right, and results-driven thinking it's very tempting to think you get it right, but I think New South Wales lucked out a bit there. But yeah, I mean, you got guys in the right, like you said, a centre playing centre, a lock playing lock. You got a proper 5'8" playing 5'8" here that complemented Mitchell Moses really well, and Walker and Moses looked natural together. I mean, you could imagine what sort of carnage they'd cause at club level if they were able to work together. They looked very comfortable working alongside one another. Reagan Campbell-Gillard, I thought, had a good game. I think he was the pick of the props. I think he definitely carried the load in the front row for the New South Wales team.
You're not going to give... Come on. Jake Trbojevic was out there, mate.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I suppose he was out there. I think that he had 10 runs for like 60 metres or something like that.
Did you notice, as soon as full time was over, that the first thing that the commentators were talking about was the contribution of Jake Trbojevic?
Yeah, I mean, look, he is obviously
Speak to me about this.
He's obviously a great guy, and I mean, maybe in the way that Gutho was picked, they see value to him being, one of the glue guys and a morale guy. But yeah, I mean, Gutho played 3 minutes and probably had nearly as much impact on the game. So,
and look, we're not putting. This isn't meant to put Jake Trbojevic down. He's just been in a winning team in Origin when he wasn't in the team for the first 2 matches, and then they've turned around and they've won. What we acknowledge is that Jake Trbojevic is a very good, consistent player in the NRL. He's important to his team, the Manly Sea Eagles. He's a solid performer in representative football, but I guess our take is that the pundits wax lyrical.
Oh yeah, like he was best on field. And look, Jake's game resembles that of a latter-day Hindies now. He is a big workforce guy.
Yes.
He's always there to make the cover tackles. He is, backing up constantly, and you can understand why coaches love that. But in the Origin format, you need to have more impact with the ball in hand.
Yeah.
But
that's probably a fair call in that you are making a comparison to the sort of contributions that Hindy made in the latter part of his career. But the early part of his career, Hindy was a devastating runner of the football as well.
Yeah, before the arthritis in his foot caught up with him. And same with Jake. He was a lot more robust in his first 4 or 5 years in the NRL. First 4 or 5 prime years in the NRL, sorry, where, he was much more effective through the middle and could ball play a bit more effectively. But yeah, obviously part of the winning team here. I thought Keon Kalaamatangi looked good as a rookie on debut. He worked nicely alongside Mitchell Moses down the right. After that, I'm just trying to think. Our bench didn't really do much. Yo played prop. He did okay there. He was fine. Saifidi, I can barely remember.
His carries were probably a little bit more effective than Jake. I guess it's what you want out of your prop, right? Because
again, you could make the argument that they should have picked an out-and-out specialist prop there. But yeah, I thought Yo was better than Saifidi. The two dummy halves, Robson and Cook, just did their jobs. And then obviously King Guffo, well, he got the token minutes at the end. So, yeah, really the starting 13 for New South Wales carried a lot of load here. The interchange, it was one of the things we were really critical of when we previewed this game with their selections there. And I think, in a way, we were validated because while they won, I don't really think the bench did much in this game.
Yeah, and you know what? That's probably a fair call too, because if we look at what happened throughout the course of the series, the impact off the bench was probably not what we wanted, and this was a game where maybe the impact off the bench wasn't required. It's just how it played out. I mean, the fact that in the first two matches we could have done with a Gutho on the bench, and then in the third match when a Gutho was put on the bench, it wasn't needed.
And that's why realistically you can't carry an emergency back on the bench. Like, yeah, games 1 and 2, it could have been used, but if you had a Ryan Madison or another back row that has played in centres before, they also do the job there, and they also just work in rotation normally. So, yeah, New South Wales got quite a few things wrong this series, but did win this game. Can be happy about that. I did notice that. I mean, we'd probably get the same bristly response from Brandy that he gave to Buzz Rothfield in 360 last night for some of our criticisms because he didn't want to hear it. But yeah, like I said, the result was good, but I think the processes were still flawed. And yeah, it leaves New South Wales in a real interesting spot about what they're going to do with their coach moving forwards. If Freddie is their guy, if not, who is available? Because Rothfield keeps pushing Ricky Stewart. He's not the guy for New South Wales. He's a club coach, and B, he had his chance at Origin and you know had mixed success there. But they need to find a fresh blood if they're going to move on from Freddie. They need to get someone in there, a la Billy Slater, that is a bit closer to the modern game and just the modern player mindset as well. Billy has come in and really rejuvenated the Queensland system with his both tactical nous and his sort of approach mentally to the game.
Yeah, it's well, yeah. As you know, Yoko that had been her criticism of Fittler and Alexander being in charge of the Blues basically to do with the time away from the modern game that both those individuals have had, and then lo and behold, Ivan Cleary was brought in to be in the box. Mm-hmm. And I think, as Brandy had said in being questioned about that he's there at the coalface now on a weekly basis. He's more in touch with what's going on with the game right now. I mean, that's almost like a nod to the fact that they aren't involved in that weekly and haven't been involved in that weekly game of NRL for some time, and maybe don't quite have that that connection to the game that you might want in an Origin coach. Now, I don't want in any way for there to be a current club coach involved in the coaching of the Origin team. I think the one right move that was made was to steer away from that, because I think you get all sorts of issues around selections. Like, it just even if it's not the case, you have that suspicion that they may favour their own players, or maybe they don't want to risk their own. There's innuendo around it.
It puts the coach into an unfair position.
Correct.
Both by picking and not picking players, like you said, whether they're going to protect players or try and get their guy in as part of a contract negotiation or something like that. Like like I said, so much innuendo that could come there. The other thing too is that NRL coaching is an incredibly time intensive job. You cannot afford to have your concentration elsewhere. It was literally why the Eels review mandated that we need to have a head of football, which would eventually become Mark O'Neill, because Brad Arthur was doing too much away from the team itself. And on top of that, New South Wales and Queensland origin spots now, it's no longer 3 games. It's a pre-season scouting process where you bring guys into an extended camp. It's constantly being connected to these guys, and it's something that Queensland's done much better than New South Wales, and that's why you want to have a specialist coach. You need to have someone that can have full resources applied to, finding guys that are going to be in selection contention, developing these guys via communication and bringing them into camp, and then, getting the most out of them for those 3 games. So, yeah, I don't know who the option is based on that for New South Wales, if they do choose to move on from Freddie. But like you said, Sixties, don't want to be a club coach. Maybe there's an assistant coach out there that might be able to step away and get the gig, like Michael Maguire, who's at Canberra right now. He could be an option, maybe, something like that. But, yeah, it's an interesting one, because if Freddie comes back, he's already the longest tenured consecutive NRL coach in history. And yeah, he's sort of in uncharted waters here. He hasn't had success recently, in like quite a while now, and he's held tenure for a long, long time. So they've got a big question to answer there, and I don't really know what they can find as the answer in the immediate future.
Yeah, I absolutely agree there. And you know what, thinking back to the selections in this series, like Brandy, as you said, was really bristling up big time when being questioned.
Well, when he was fronted with the quote from Freddie that Reagan Campbell-Gillard doesn't suit their style at Origin just 2 years ago, or whatever it was, a year and a bit ago.
Last year.
Last year. And suddenly he's their best prop in the game, and they like him. It's just like, I understand that you have to throw a line out there to justify why you're dropping a guy, but why not just say we had other guys we felt were better, rather than making up some ridiculous excuse that's going to come back to bite you on the backside a year later. Reagan Campbell-Gillard's game doesn't suit State of Origin. Like, come on.
Yeah, and then to say statements like, "Oh, we're just going to be talking about the past, are we?" This is this. Like it's, but anyway, he's bristled up about those sorts of selections. But the fact is, they have to decide what is best for selecting an Origin team. Now, they're without question, someone like Latrell Mitchell, you look at him and you go, he has to be in the Origin team. So really, the tough call should be make your decision about who's going to be your fullback, right? Stop playing players out of position. I understand that there's that thinking of, you just pick your best 13 and find a spot for them. That clearly hasn't worked, because they've decided that Latrell Mitchell and Jake and Tom Turbo are players that they have to have in the team regardless, right? And due to injury, it hasn't worked for them being their options this year. And, is that going to change with Tommy Turbo? No. Is that going to change with Latrell Mitchell? Well, we don't know. I mean, he's had some injury issues over a couple of years now. But I think they have to make that call. You're either picking Latrell at fullback, or you're picking James Tedesco. Now, 40, I know you've got like some interesting stats that you've said about Teddy, because Teddy had a better game in attack, and like with a couple of key moments. But what were some of his other stats? Yeah,
the one that caught my eye, and I do want to stress, I'm not going to downplay his offensive involvement. He looked much better with the ball in hand, attacking down that left edge primarily. But defensively for this game, he's billed for 0 tackles made, 5 missed, and 2 ineffective. At least that was his original one. Let me just see if they've updated it now. Yeah, 0-5-2. And one of those includes that line break, which I thought was off a pretty huge forward pass, to be fair, down Parramatta, New South Wales' right edge, that he got absolutely stood up at the back. The last line, it took the cover chases to save his blushes there. And it's not the first time this series we saw the hammer put him on skates in game 1. So, yeah, he was better under the high ball. He was better in attack, and obviously they're crucial aspects of the game there too. But yeah, it doesn't feel like he was in his groove fully again on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and as I said, I think if you're talking about players who are performing well in club football at fullback, like if we get to next year and Latrell Mitchell is the standout fullback in the competition and Teddy's playing the sort of football that he is at the moment, there's only one decision to be made. Like, you pick your best fullback as the fullback.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look to play players out of position simply to avoid the embarrassment of not selecting them, because that's what it comes down to. Now, you're going to cop media pressure around that. But, if you just simply said, we are picking the best player in that position from their form in the premiership.
Mm-hmm.
We are keeping specialist players in specialist positions. Yeah, there basically wouldn't be an argument against it. Like, a media person could say, oh, but surely you can't leave out Teddy. He's been the captain for the last couple of years. You say, well, that's the last thing we would have wanted, but how do you not select?
There are 2 or 3 other fullbacks in better form, whether it was Dylan Edwards, Tom Tebojevic, Latrell Mitchell, whoever, Quentin Gutherson, in 2020, in 2024, whichever player is in the best form. I agree. It should be seen as an open competition, and that's if New South Wales have that ultra aggressive competitive mindset to beat Queensland. That's what they should be doing, and that applies to the halves. That applies to centres, front row, all those positions. I feel like when you get beaten the way we have in the last couple of series, incumbency means little, and that means that Nathan Cleary, Mitchell Moses, Cody Walker, Jerome Luai, all those guys, Nico Hines. You got to obviously Mitch getting a good individual game in game 2 and getting the win in game 3. It puts him in good stead moving forwards. But you got to pick the guys that are playing good football in general. And yeah, and I think there's some lessons to be learned about some of the players they've picked that haven't performed at Origin level too. They've got to remember, when it comes to combinations that they stressed were important, but it turns out that club combinations aren't the same as State of Origin. So
yeah, and you know what? They can do all the justification on form, because first of all, if you take any selection in Origin, if it's purely based on form, which is what most representative team selections should be, they're not necessarily the case, because even when you go into junior football, there's an element of politics. When I say junior football, I'm talking about age team selection. There's a bit of to and fro with who they select from what team, and or players that they've maybe had their eye on, or they're trying to make sure they come through because they've been a talented, whatever the case may be. There's inverted commas favoured players that tend to get selected, it's like the what they used to say about the Australian cricket team as well. It's harder to get out than to get in with the team. That form doesn't necessarily equate to selection, but I think form has to be a major contributor to selection. That you're the best player in your position in the competition should be the first one, and then the second criteria is perhaps then you're looking at, okay, you've been in this position for New South Wales for the last few years. You haven't produced at Origin level. We will go to the next best player in form in the competition, and that's where you may, and look, that in itself isn't unusual either, because you had the scenario where like players that go away on tours, you get the best couple of players. I'm talking probably about the old Kangaroo tours, when you would get essentially 2 teams of players go away to represent the Kangaroos, and you would get the best couple of players in each position that would go away on the tour. And form in tour matches and what have you would help to guide the tour
eventual
selectors.
selection.
Yeah. So And that comes down to combinations within the players in that playing group. And I mean, the classic example is when Kenny and Sterling won selection ahead of, I think it was Mortimer and Lewis on the 82 Kangaroo Tour. I mean, it was, they were, even though the Eels were the premiership winning team, it was those two were new to the representative scene. They weren't the incumbents, but they forced a change of position with Lewis, with how Brett Kenny was performing. So anyway, we've probably taken as deep a dive into Origin as we possibly can, mate. Just before we get into the previews, any thoughts on a certain representative rugby league player sending explicit photos of himself on social media to
getting catfished? Yeah.
Like,
it's just a reminder of the negatives of the digital age, isn't it? And done a very silly thing and got caught up in now the sort of blackmail process from it. But you hate to see it, even if it, the whole process is a bit on the are you all right, mate, sort of process scale, like why are you doing this?
There's been no rumours either as to who it's been. Well, none that I've seen anyway. But mate, like,
just
at what point does the learning?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, obviously, you don't want to see them exposed and have to deal with the fallout from that sort of thing. But gosh, like, come on, guys, like, keep it in your pants for a good reason.
Yeah. It's they learn the hard way, and it may well be that at some point in the near future the identity of that player comes out, and which is going to be further embarrassment for them. And you know what? On top of everything else, when these things happen, they don't just put their career or and even when it comes to rugby league players, their marketability at risk. And when I say marketability, I mean you're talking about relationships with sponsors for a whole range of things, or post-football careers or things like that. And if you engage in the sort of stuff where it's so negative, or it just shows, not the smartest choices.
Yeah. And
why impact your future and your career with that sort of nonsense?
It comes back to that whole discussion about how insure the lives of an NRL player can be, and how out of perspective and out of touch they can be relative to the normal person. And it's tough with the educational processes. Like, obviously they're trying to gear these guys up, these young men and women, and I throw the women in there not for this, but just down the future when their competition is more entrenched as a high profile, high paying opportunity. They tend to not have the perspective required of or equal to that of a normal person. And but then in saying that, there are average Joe Blows and Janes that would also goof up in this regard too. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's. I guess the point being that yes, the average person, can get messed up in and can mess up with this sort of thing, but the amount of education around it that gets pumped into NRL players,
and we know that social media is a huge emphasis now with the educational processes. So, look, some people need to touch the frying pan to learn that it is indeed hot, and that might be the case here.
It will sit, mate. It's there certainly are people that do need to touch the frying pan to know it's hot.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
All right, let's talk Parramatta football now. We've got a couple of games to preview before we check out ahead of the Sunday. But starting on Sunday, as the curtain rose out at Combank Stadium, Parramatta Eels taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs, 11th v 8th. It's probably Parramatta's first non-top 4 opponent in a while, it feels like. But they're hosting them at 3:45 p.m. kickoff. For the Eels 60s, we've got a couple of changes here, a couple of big ins. We start at fullback. You got Arthur Miller-Stephen On the wings, Hayes Dunster and Isaac Lumi. Samuel Louise, who's back, he's in the centres with Wanga Blake. Zach Sini moves into the 5'8" position, replacing poor Dan Keir, who has done as good a job as you could ask of him, considering he's a big back row playing in the 5'8" position for a number of weeks. But Sini partners Jordan Rankin in the halves. In the front row positions, you've got a couple of big boys back, Ofahiki Ogden and Makahesi Makatoa. They're bookending Jaden Yates, Jack Murchie, Matt Dury and Kai Rodwell in the back row. Dan Keir, Jonte Jr., Beth Mamiza, Tony Mattelli and Jira Momasia round out the interchange rotation. South Sydney, a couple of names you're going to recognise here. Jacob Gargai. We got Leonard Skelton, one of the Skelton boys there. Dean Hawkins, Daniel Saluka Fafita, Peter Mamazoulos, Liam Knight, Benjamin Lovett, Shakai Mitchell on the interchange. Yelene Gordon, Buddy Gordon, still running around. So he's doing a good job there for Souths. But, yeah.
It feels like an eternity ago that he was running around for Wenty.
Mm-hmm. As an Eels affiliate,
It felt like he was right near the end of his career when he was running around for Wenty.
He's got a bit of Cliff Lyons going on right there, has he?
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
The ageless wonder of New South Wales Cup. So well done to Buddy there. But yeah, the Eels, they get their first sort of non-big dog matchup in a while. Can they make an opportunity or make this opportunity count 60s? Reinforcements in the front row. Backline looks a little bit better balanced now. Still not, perfect, but the big weakness in this team in the halves hasn't really been solved. Zach Sini is probably going to play a running 5'8" role where he'll maybe distribute the ball early to his centres, but most likely he's going to take on the line himself, a la Ryan Madison in the NRL. But Maddo having a bit better of a feel for that position, obviously. Can they get the job done here out at CommBank Stadium?
I look at the team and I go, okay, that's a lot better on paper. It's still a huge question mark with Zach having to play in the halves because, again, it's manufacturing a playmaker from another position. It's probably a better option than having a back rower playing at 5'8", but that's probably the best team that they will be able to get on the field this year, if we're honest. It's maybe when Dejan is no longer required in NRL, when Dylan Brown returns and he returns into the halves, that's probably where you will get them at their strongest. But as far as the pack's concerned, could you expect a much stronger pack than that? Probably not. How will they perform this week? I've got no friggin' idea, to be honest. In all honesty, how could you predict? Because, there were elements that we've seen in the last couple of weeks where there's some improvement, but when they concede tries, they will concede them in quick succession.
In batches, yeah.
So, so look, I've honestly got no idea. I'd like to think that we're going to see a better performance from them. They did they beat South earlier this year? I've got it in my head that they beat South.
They did 26-16 back in round 12 out at Allianz.
Yeah. So South aren't really setting the world on fire in New South Wales Cup. You said they're coming 8th.
Yeah, to our 11th, yeah.
Yeah, so is it possible for the Eels to get a win here? Yes. Will they? My thought is they probably won't, because I think they're down in confidence. I think they're down in form. And although it's a better lineup, and I'd like to think there will be a better outcome, I honestly have no confidence in that. I'm hoping that having Ogden and Makatoa back in this pack is going to make a big difference to the middle. But we've also seen that, there's been players who they've just simply looked a lot better up at the new NRL level out of New South Wales Cup. So, yeah.
That's the thing. When you talk about those guys, Ogden and Makatoa in particular, part of me wouldn't be shocked if they come back in and play decent but not outstanding compared to what they were doing at NRL level where they were being, serious contributors. It's just the reality of being in a better supporting cast and a better environment. So I hope they can make the difference.
And incidentally, I just had a quick look. Yleen Gordon is 36.
There you go. The ageless Buddy Gordon. Well done.
36 years of age.
Yeah, 36 years of age and still running around strong in Reggie. So well done to Buddy. And for the Eels 60s, obviously you want to see the win, but they have curtailed the high scoring a little bit in recent weeks compared to where they were at, where they were getting 64 and 46 put on them against the Bulldogs and Sea Eagles, or Blacktown Workers Eagles, and then 40 against the Jets, and then 36 against the Warriors, who are both very good teams. So they're stemming and they're bleeding a little bit, but can they put the points on the board to get close to the win? We have to wait and see.
Yeah, look, I think we probably suspect that there are going to be players moved on that are running around in this grade at the moment. There will probably be a lot of the younger players that will be playing New South Wales Cup next year. I think we will see a changing of the guard in that regard. What the players who are running around out there have the opportunity to do is to either put forward the case that they should be retained by the club between now and the end of the year, or secondly, put on strong enough performances that they're noted by other clubs and are picked up and have an opportunity elsewhere next year. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there's nothing to play for.
I agree. There's still plenty on the line for these guys moving forwards. And for the Eels, they if they're trying to mimic that Penrith pathway system, they'll be looking to facilitate the transfer of those Jersey Flegg guys into positions in the New South Wales Cup. So they've got to find that balance of getting the sort of senior guys in around those young kids, and this is where sort of the grading process really gets aggressive. Who's going to play for their spots?
Yeah, and do you know what? If I suspect that if it wasn't for the case of the players that are running around in New South Wales Cup, they may need them for first grade. Some of them for first grade. That you would possibly see weeks like this where Jersey Flegg has a bye, that there'd be a few more players running around in New South Wales Cup. I think it's the fact that those Jersey Flegg boys wouldn't be ready to step up to first grade, that they need these New South Wales Cup fellas to be out there on the field and also maintaining their match fitness and trying to get some form. Because you never know. Two
of the three, I'd say, most eligible guys to progress also were playing New South Wales State of Origin in Sanders and Guymer. With Sam, obviously not too far behind them, but being a year young, you want to make sure he's right physically before stepping him up. So they're just lined up badly for the Eels in that regard. But if they can be competitive again, that's a big step forwards for them in this game. And obviously you want to get the win, but like you said, 60's confidence levels are right in the gutter right now. They've been, kicked and stomped last, 5-6 games. So they need to find a way to break it, but it's tough. But speaking of a team that wants a win, or two teams that want bounce back wins, actually, we move on to the NRL, where the 7th placed Eels host the 11th placed Titans in that ultra congested battle for the top 8. This one is in that awful kickoff slot of 6:15 p.m. I don't know why, but here we are. Eels into this game as firm favourites out at CommBank Stadium, but the Titans, their lineup's pretty good. 60s, AJ Brimson, Khan Pereira, Kelly, Shop, Sami in the back line. A very, very good, well-rounded back line there. Foran and Boyd in the halves. Fodawaker, Verrills, Tino Fa'asuamala Awi as captain. Dave Fafita, Cleese Haas, Isaac Liu in the back row on the interchange. Campbell, Randall, Clark and Fafita. Probably the weakness of their team, that bench, really, I don't understand its construction. But hey, it worked for New South Wales. Hopefully it doesn't work for the Titans. Their extended roster, there's another Fa'asuamala Awi, Isaac. You got Jacob Alec, Keanu Keeney, Cruz Leeming, Ken Mamalo, Tony Francis and Thomas Makahesi. Extended rosters this week in the Origin impacted round 60s. So instead of just the 22, we get up to 24 players. For the Eels, well, they've named their best available team: Gutho at fullback, Sevo, Penasini, Simonson, and Russell in the back line. Shaun moving from fullback back to right wing, obviously to accommodate Gutho coming back. Dejan Arce and Mitchell Moses in the halves. Reagan Campbell-Gillard, Brendan Hands, and Junior Barlow on the front row. Lane, Cartwright, Hopgood in the back row. Luca Moretti, he holds his spot in the team. He's having a nice little run here. Joe Fangahi, Andrew Davey, and Ryan Madison, the interchange forwards for the Eels. Ogden, Makatoa, Blake, Dury, Dunster, and Lumi on the extended shadow bench. Chris Butler is the man with the whistle. Ferner and Ultram on the sidelines. Grant Atkins is in the box. Yeah, Eels, they fell to the Titans by 2 points in a very frenetic game. The last time these two teams met, back in Magic Round, was it 60s? Round 10?
Yeah, it was Magic Round.
And that was one of two games.
Similar time.
Yeah, it was. The stupid time slot, yeah. Instead of two beautiful Sunday afternoon games for the NRL on Sunday, just one, and then the twilight game. I don't understand, but yeah, that was one of two games that broke the straw. That proved to be the straws. Sorry, that broke the camel's back for BA, where he actually ended up blowing up about penalty counts. That in the Canberra game. So can the Eels get a fair look in on the whistle? I hope so. On paper, the team looks very good. The real weakness of this team, I don't really know now. I mean, Arce and Moses, they're going to be good in the halves. The fact that all three players backed up out of Origin is really nice. Same for the Titans too, though, by the way. There was a quartet of Origin players. Brimson, Fafita, Fa'asuamala Awi, and am I missing someone, or was it just a trio for them? Maybe it was just a trio. Also backing up cleanly. There was some question marks. Oh, did Mo Fodawaker play? Maybe he was a quartet there. There was some question marks about David Fafita's fitness, but there was a confused sort of press release with the Cowboys player. No, sorry. So, yeah, both teams looking very strong on paper. The Eels need to have their 60s. Unfortunately, that loss to the Warriors, as impacted by Origin as it was actually a very high leverage game in the context of the finishes to the season. And it's going to probably cost the Eels a top 4 spot in the long term unless they win absurdly well in the run home now. So this one you got to have, because the Titans are 1 win behind you. Make sure no, they're not 1 win behind us. They're 2 wins behind us, but they've had the buys. But on the ladder, they're 2 points behind us. So you got the Rabbitohs, the Cowboys, the Seagulls on your heels. You've got the Warriors, the Raiders, the Storm, the Sharks just ahead of you. So if you do want to make a push for the top 4 and you do want to consolidate your spot in the top 8, you got to have this one this week.
Yeah. Mate, first, for a start, have the NRL totally taken the piss with us with the draw this year?
Oh, 100%. You've already done a dive into it. One of my contemporaries on the footy Discord has also done a dive into it just now. And, yeah, the Eels have been done very dirty in this draw. From, time scheduling, from travel, from playing people off buys to no Origin buys. We got the equal most 5-day turnarounds. Like any of those individual things you cop to some degree, because no draw is going to be perfect in that regard. Someone's got to have 5-day turnaround. Someone's got to play, certain time slots. But the Eels have copped it at every level on the draw. There's been no silver lining for them with their NRL scheduling.
Yeah, and it's something that people who are members would have received the email from CEO Jim Sarantinos, and he mentioned that the Eels are taking up aspects of the draw with the NRL to, hopefully get something a bit fairer next season. But what has got me stunned is that, well, maybe it shouldn't have stunned me. Have the media, did they give any acknowledgement of the fact that the Eels were the only club to not have a bye in the Origin impacted rounds?
I think it's been mentioned on a podcast, and that's it. There's been no actual articles about it. no,
Well, it's been mentioned. It's been mentioned plenty on TCT.
Yeah, sorry, I've been mentioned by a journalist on a podcast, I think, at one point recently. It hasn't been mentioned elsewhere except for TCT. There's been no proper dive into or journalistic investigation into the imbalances of the 2023 draw, which you think would be a nice little double-page spread, honestly, for all the data points you could extrapolate, because it's not just about Parramatta. There'd be other teams impacted too. I'm just trying to think, maybe South Sydney, I think maybe the Broncos have some weird quirks of their bye as well. But
the Broncos got 2 byes in the Origin impacted rounds. So, and look, there are clubs that you would expect would get would need to be looked at for the potential of 2 byes, right? I don't have a problem if you've got clubs that are seen to have a large number of representatives. You can't have a scenario where a team like the Warriors get a bye and the Eels do not, or the other clubs that can be fairly accurately predicted that they're not going to have too many Origin representatives. It was obvious that Parramatta were going to have somewhere between 2 and 4 who were a genuine chance of playing Origin football, and that didn't even include the potential that Shaun Lane could have played Origin this year, given his form last year. But regardless, right, my issue this week is, again, another late Sunday game. And this is on top of Thursday night games, Friday 6 p.m. games, Sunday night games. None of this is conducive to getting the best possible home crowds for a start, which then takes away a little bit of a playing advantage as well for having teams having to roll up and face a vocal or hostile home crowd at CommBank Stadium. It costs the club money. It costs the club significant money when they don't get the crowds that they would if the game was played at a more friendly spectator time. We just don't get the matches at the times that they should be. And it's been a horror year for that. It's been an absolutely horror year for that. So hopefully it's changed for next year as a result of Parramatta's representation to the NRL. But I just wanted to mention that because, 6:15 on a Sunday night.
Yeah. Yep. It's just terrible
and as I said,
as a fan.
especially when it was the same time that they had to play against the Titans in the first time that they played them. I mean, it's just, if you didn't know better, you'd almost swear it was deliberately taking the piss. Like, in all seriousness, I'm over the draw this year. But let's get back to talking about the footy. Mate, the one thing that we know about the Titans is that they are an unpredictable team. We caught them in one of their better performances of the year where they performed well in the first half and then backed it up.
And did enough in the second half.
Second half. Yeah, and not only that, they had desperation in their defence.
Mm-hmm.
Like the number of times that we created opportunities, but it was that desperation scramble from the Titans that prevented tries from being scored. They've got threats in the middle. They've got threats on the edges. They've got one of the fastest wingers in the competition in Khan Pereira, and they have that potential that they could unlock any of them at any given time. And we just have to be back to that Parramatta footy of high completions, good kick chase, play the game in the Titans half, put the pressure on, have them make mistakes that we know are in their game. And that's the starting point for this game of football. We can't be worried about trying to blast them off the park at any particular time. I think if we get into playing a touch footy brand of football, that plays into their hands.
Yeah.
And we've we've half pie done that a number of times that we've played.
Round one last year, earlier on this season, where we let them race out to an early lead with our right edge sort of falling apart a bit, and Kieran Foran picking us apart. So yeah, we got to get into tempo quickly. We got to get playing good fundamental para football, and yeah, if we do that, the opportunity to score will come quickly.
Yeah, and I think this is where we obviously need our Origin boys just to be straight back into their focus. I'm not sure whether they're going to get an opportunity to train with the team before the match. I'd hope so, but they've got to go through their own recovery processes as well, and maybe that necessitates that they won't get to train. We and that's obviously today, their last training session. So the Eels don't train the day before a match.
No, they do the day.
They
before.
train two days before a match.
Right, the day before them.
So, So that means training is today, and whether the Origin boys get rushed into training, I've got a doubt on that. Perhaps the argument is, well, at this point in the season, they don't need to be running around as part of the prep. But the thing is, each training session before a particular match is focusing on what they're expecting in both attack and defence for that particular opponent. They're working towards certain plays in attack. They're working towards certain things to watch out for in defence. They're working on the things that are identified in their tip sheet, and the reminders are out there from the coaches about what they are likely to expect. So that if they're not part of training, which they haven't been whilst they've been in camp, their involvement in the game, it's great that they will be back and playing, but they've still missed out on some of the prep.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a downside of it. So, what to expect? Well, I guess I'm going to repeat myself and say that I want that Parramatta football. I want the high completion. I want the good kick, and I want the pressure applied. And then I want to see, once they've got the team in the quarter, that's when I want to see them really use the ball there, that they've earned the right to use the football down at the other end of the field.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the team itself is concerned, you mentioned the Luca Moretti retaining his place in the side, and I think that had a lot to do with his performance last week, because although his minutes weren't big, when he came out, he played with intent. And, he's done a very good job at grasping his opportunity this year. And we see by his retention in the team that that's put him above the pecking order, ahead of Ogden and Makatoa. So full marks to Luca for that. That's what you're probably looking at is close to what the full-strength Parramatta team will be. The only change might be when Wiramu Greg returns from injury. He'll probably force his way into that team. Now, what it then comes down to is whether BA would carry Luca or Andy Davey in a bench which has Wiramu in it. So, But I'm also pleased to see Cardi retain his starting role there on that side of the field, because he's really made that role his own this year, and it shows that BA's got a bit of faith in him as well. It was a less than ideal performance from Cardi last week.
Also, but also foiled by Shaun Lane having a very ordinary return from his injury. So plenty of improvement there for those boys this week. But yeah, how he being Brad Arthur uses Matto in that rotation now is going to be very interesting. You can obviously just throw him into the middle if you want to beef up that middle. And looking at this Titans bench 60s, I think there's opportunities to really go after their ruck. Campbell, Randall, Clark, Fafita. You've got a utility back a dummy half slash lock forward, and Jojo Fafita's back as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
So unless there's something crazy going on there on game day of changes, the Eels could really dominate the ruck here. And that's got to be their mission statement in this game. Go out there, own the middle. Everything else comes from that. Don't spot the Titans' early points like you did in round 10. And yeah, like you said, play Parramatta football. There's going to be attacking opportunities to take. That's good. But, smash them in the face. Like you punch them in the face in this game. With some props.
So, do you see that those opportunities are going to come either side of half time then with that bench when you're likely to see more of the bench players on there?
I mean, there's obviously a chance that just Reg Jr., Hopgood, carve them up from the get-go. But I think that you look at that bench rotation, Joe Ofahiki, Ryan Madison, and being the two primary ones there. But, Luke and Moretti could also be thrown into the fray a little bit earlier in this game perhaps. But, yeah, you look at that rotation, there's going to be some opportunities, I think, like you said, sort of in that 25-minute bracket onwards before halftime. I really hope that we can completely dominate the ruck here, and that nullifies so many of their threats. And that's not to say that guys like Brimson and Khan Pereira and Sami can't be, threatening from the Titans side of halfway. We know they're an explosive offense, but you're certainly mitigating a lot of their impact when you put them on the back foot through the middle. So that's a big thing for me. And the fact that the Eels, while not all their guys are in great form, we talked about Shaun Lane, being rusty coming back from an injury. That wasn't to be, unexpected. But I think they're going to be better this week, and I think that just sans Dylan Brown and Wirra McGregor, this is our best possible team we can put out right now. And we're in a good position to make a run because of it. So get it started on Sunday with a win over the Titans, and then you got to look to start getting that roll on going from there because we've got a tough run. If I just pull up our draw, there's never really a gimme in the NRL. We talk about this all the time, but you take on the Titans, you got to get the win against them. You go up to North Queensland and the surging Cowboys. You go to Melbourne to take on the Storm. You then host the Dragons. You go to Brisbane to take on the Broncos. You host the Roosters. Then you go to Penrith to finish your regular season because you got the last round bye. So, you got the Dragons maybe as like you put that down as not a gimme, but like as a definitely strong winnable game. But after that, the Roosters are the next easiest game, and I put inverted commas on easiest because the Roosters won't be easy when they play us. It feels like they always turn up against us. And they've traditionally been a strong team, but now they're struggling. They're still going to turn up against us, it feels like. So, yeah, so many tough games on the schedule. Getting this one is critical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned in the Bumpers Up column this week that the Eels draw has them playing 2 matches this year against the Storm, the Panthers, the Roosters, the Broncos, the Cowboys, the Sea Eagles, the Titans, the Bulldogs. Only once do we play Dragons, Tigers, Knights, Dolphins, Warriors, Rabbitohs, Raiders, and Sharks. Obviously, the Rabbitohs and the Sharks is not too bad, only having to play them once. The Raiders, we had to play them away, and we remember what happened in that game in terms of the penalties. It was that was the game that really tipped BA over the edge, wasn't it, with his post-match comments. And then you look at the Raiders and listen to their draw. The teams that they play once are the Panthers, the Rabbitohs, Storm, us, Cowboys, Roosters, Manly, Titans. It's almost a flip of the draw. It's like, and they get 2 games against the Bulldogs, the Tigers, the Knights, the Dragons, the Dolphins, the Warriors, the Sharks, and the Broncos.
Who you play is a huge factor in finishing in the top 8. I mean, we've seen it.
Look,
we've seen it.
Yeah, as you say, we've seen it. We see it year on year. Somehow there will be teams which have been literally kissed on the proverbial with the draw that they get, and you look at it and you go, "How is this possible? How is it that a team can end up like you can literally predict?" And they talk about, this year, it's been the most unpredictable year or what have you. You're going to end up with the teams in the top 8, mostly that you expected to be in the top 8 when all's said and done, right? It's going to be there. But those fringe ones like Canberra will get there probably on the basis of the draw. Like they've scraped home in a whole number of matches, and you just know that if that draw had been flipped, that they would have done it tough, like really, really tough to get near finals football. And I mean, okay, that's the luck of the draw. I mean, that's the saying. That's literally what's happened this year. But when you're a team that has copped the rough end of a draw, and you get to this time in the year, and you're facing teams like the top of the table teams for a second time, and you just know you're going to be like if you make the finals, if you win the comp, you've really earned every bit of it. And it seems like year on year, the Eels play the top teams twice, and year on year there seems to be certain teams that don't play the top teams twice.
Yeah, and part of that. Yeah, I think part of that is the Eels always travel well in terms of fans, so they're a priority for a lot of interstate teams to have booked in as part of their 2-game slot or the home and away slot. But yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? 60s, I think if you go back and document our draw across like the last 5-6 years, it's been among the hardest every year. So it'd be nice to have the some of the layup games that some of the other teams have been getting in recent seasons, but. Yeah, it's a problem for 2024, and hopefully the Eels can maybe get a little bit of leeway there after talking to the NRL. But let's start talking predictions. We've been rambling and ranting for a bit now, so let's lodge our official predictions for this game. With the Eels looking to knock over the Titans, how do you see this one playing out, mate?
Look, if Parramatta play the way they should play, the way they are capable of playing, then this to me becomes a comfortable win, and I'm talking. I'll predict a scoreline of around 34-12, something like that. Now, the proviso, and it's always the proviso, is against the Titans that we don't get drawn into playing touch football against them. Like, if we score early. As what happened a couple of years back in the home game at CommBank Stadium, that we don't think it's all going to come too easy. We need the team to say
it's the worst possible thing we could do.
We cannot look. I know it opened up for us against the Dolphins, but it was opening up in playing our brand of football. And there was some late opportunities that came in the back half of that first half, but they were still coming off us going to the plan of hitting the edges. I'm not going to, even though it looks spectacular, the spectacular came from some of the backing up, the support play, or a couple of Cardi's passes, little backhander sort of support pass. But, they were playing to what they trained to do, which was to hit the edges. We have to stay you have to stay to the game plan. We have to stay in our systems. We saw what the disaster that can unfold when we turn over a lot of possession. And that happened against the Warriors last week. Our completions were down in the 60-odd% area, and we were on the back foot far too often. And I didn't like the way that the Warriors hit us in behind the ruck. And you've just got to ensure that you don't give the opposition the opportunity to play the game the way they want to play it. And essentially that's what the Warriors were able to do. The Warriors were able to play Warriors football last week, and we were in a position of standing and watching them. And that was how that played out. Yourself, mate, what's your thoughts on score and how it's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be very optimistic here insofar as the Eels committing to a defensive goal and executing, because while scoring lots of points will be ideal, I think limiting the Titans will be a better indicator if the Eels are bouncing back from the Warriors or no. So I'm going to have the Titans down to a single try some way, somehow, as the Eels lock in for this one. So I'll go for Parramatta win 26-6. So, a few less points for us, but if we can restrict the Titans to single-digit points or even just like 10 or 12 points, I think that's a big win for the Eels and indicative of a team mindset that is focused and driven ahead of a tough upcoming schedule.
Yep. Your best on field?
Best on field. Well, it's always easy to go for one of the big plays, obviously, but I think maybe in this one, I feel like we're due for a good game from Makahesi, so maybe the Eels get him some ball and he'll have his way down the Gold Coast right edge.
I can't go past the King. I think the King will.
Yeah, I mean,
he's smarting at the fact that he got 3 minutes. He's had 3 minutes of football in the last fortnight. He's not going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
So,
that's a very sound pick, sound of mine. But he's definitely going to be fired up for this one.
And there is no doubt at all that we missed his direction from behind the ruck last week, especially in defence. We just seemed all at sea against the Warriors, and I think that's his involvement, his talk from the back of the field there is really, really critical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he will have I think he'll have a really important game to play for us this week. First try scorer?
I'm going to double down. I'll go Micah for a big game and first try scorer.
I'll double down and go the King.
There we go.
There you go.
Nice and easy.
Yes, mate. And just as we finish things up, a reminder that we are on with a pre-game podcast at Paraleague. So get up to Jack's Bar and Grill about 3:00 on Sunday afternoon as we hit you with the preview podcast. And that gives you time to come into the club, have a drink, have a feed, listen to our footy talk, then get over there for 2 grades of football over at Combank Stadium. As we know, Paraleagues is the home of the Eels. So make sure you enjoy and participate in all that they have to offer on match days to make the club the home of the Eels. Thank you also to our sponsors, Big Swing Golf at Northmead and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, who make this weekly podcast, our 3 times a week podcast possible, as well as other content on the Cumberland Throw. Thank you for listening. Thank you, John, for your fine hosting work as normal. And we will be seeing all of you on Sunday at the game. And then we will have you with our post-game instant reaction later Sunday night.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, don't forget to vote on the club constitution, 60s.
Of course. And go you mighty Eels.